At 50, Leonardo DiCaprio finally admits what he regrets most about Kate Winslet. For 28 years, their on-screen romance in Titanic has overshadowed their real-life, famously platonic bond. But now, in a rare moment of vulnerability, Leo has delivered a shockwave. In a recent interview, he opened up not about his latest film or his dating life, but about his timeless co-star and friend Kate Winslet. What massive unspoken regret has haunted the typically private star for decades? This isn't about missed romance, it's a profound admission about the very fabric of their legendary friendship. Prepare for a revelation that changes how you view Jack and Rose's enduring legacy. Long before the lights of Titanic hit his face, before the world claimed him as Jack Dawson, Leonardo DiCaprio was just a young man shaped by a life that rarely resembled the glamour Hollywood liked to imagine. To understand what he revealed at 50, you have to understand the boy he was before fame altered the course of everything. Leonardo DiCaprio was born in 1974 in Los Angeles, raised in neighborhoods where creativity and hardship often shared the same address. His father, George DiCaprio, worked in the world of underground comics, while his mother, Irmelin, carried the weight of financial responsibility after their separation. There was no luxury in his childhood. He grew up near streets marked by violence and addiction, surrounded by lives that could crumble overnight. Those early years gave him empathy, but they also taught him caution, an awareness that nothing in life was guaranteed. Acting found him slowly, first through commercials, then small roles, then a spot on the series Growing Pains. He sensed early that people saw only the bright-eyed teenager, unaware of the complexities he carried under the surface. His breakthrough arrived in 1993 with What's Eating Gilbert Grape, when he was only 19. The Academy Award nomination that followed startled him more than it thrilled him. 2 years later, The Basketball Diaries demanded a level of emotional rawness that revealed what he was capable of. And by 1996, Romeo and Juliet had turned him into a global heartthrob, a title that felt more like a trap than a triumph. At 21, when he accepted the role of Jack Dawson, Leonardo was balancing admiration with fear. He worried about being reduced to an image, a face studios could package and sell. He feared losing creative control. He feared disappearing into the machine before he had fully found himself. Fame had arrived fast, loud, and it was overwhelming. So when he stepped onto the Titanic set in 1996, he did so with a guarded heart. He protected himself carefully, revealing only what the work demanded. Hollywood rewarded charm but punished vulnerability. And Leonardo had learned that lesson early. As the production expanded into a massive, grueling undertaking, huge sets, enormous water tanks, relentless schedules, he reminded himself to stay grounded, to stay focused, to stay safe. What the world later interpreted as aloofness was simply self-preservation. He was not distant. He was overwhelmed. He was trying to find balance at a time when everything around him threatened to take that balance away. Titanic was not just another film for him. It was the turning point that would reshape his entire life. It would transform him into a household name, a cultural symbol, and a face audiences would never forget. Yet back then, standing on the edge of a production that felt impossibly large, he had no idea how deeply this film would link him to Kate Winslet, how fiercely their names would intertwine, or how long the world would hold on to the story they created together. Before Kate Winslet became Rose DeWitt Bukater, before her face appeared on posters, and her voice became synonymous with one of cinema's most unforgettable characters, she was a young actress fighting to be seen in an industry that offered her little room to breathe. Kate Elizabeth Winslet was born in 1975 in Reading, England, into a family full of artistic dreams but haunted by financial hardship. Her parents, both actors, often worked multiple jobs to keep the family afloat, and acting roles were unpredictable. Their home was filled with encouragement but not stability, and Kate learned early what resilience looked like in real time. Redroof's Theatre School became her foundation. It was a place where talent blossomed, But comparison lingered in every corner. She grew up on stage, taking on roles with a seriousness far beyond her years. Acting was not a hobby for Kate. It was her identity. It allowed her to outgrow the insecurities that clung to her through adolescence. She carried tenderness and ambition in equal measure, but she also carried wounds, whispers that she was not the right body type for leading roles, comments that quietly chipped away at her confidence. Hollywood noticed her early. Heavenly Creatures in 1994 showcased her emotional range, and Sense and Sensibility brought her to the Academy Awards by 1996. But success did not erase her doubts. When Titanic entered her orbit, she was only 20 years old, and the magnitude of the project terrified her. Rose was elegant, refined, emotionally complex, the kind of role people assumed belonged to actresses with unattainable beauty standards. Kate worried she would not be enough, that she would disappoint the team, that she would stand beside a rising star like Leonardo DiCaprio and somehow fall short. But everything changed when they met. Instead of judgment, she found warmth. Instead of distance, she found honesty. Leonardo understood pressure the way she did. He understood insecurity, scrutiny, the weight of expectations. Their differences in background faded in the face of something far more important. They were two young actors trying desperately to navigate an industry that demanded perfection while offering very little protection. As Titanic prepared to shoot, both of them carried their fears quietly, their hopes carefully, and their determination fiercely. And somewhere in the middle of that emotional whirlwind, their bond began to form, not through chemistry or destiny, but through recognition. From the moment Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio sat together at their first table read in 1996, something in the room shifted. Titanic was already massive, intense and demanding, but their ease with one another softened the edges of what was to come. Neither of them knew it yet, but the friendship forming between them would carry them through the hardest months of their young careers. Kate had feared Leonardo might be too cool, too distant, too swept up in fame to connect with her. But the moment he walked in, she sensed the truth. He was playful, charming, and brilliantly quick. He joked with the crew, teased the cast, and brought light into a room filled with nerves. When Kate leaned toward him and confessed that she feared she would disappoint him, he laughed gently, and something settled between them, something warm, unspoken, and very reassuring. Filming Titanic was nothing like the glamorous story the world imagined. It was long days soaked in freezing water, hours repeating emotionally draining scenes, and the enormous pressure of working under James Cameron, whose pursuit of realism often pushed everyone to their limits. Kate nearly drowned during one take. Leonardo developed knee injuries. They were cold, bruised, and exhausted. But through it all, they became each other's sanctuary. Between takes, Leonardo warmed Kate's hands. She teased him about his messy habits. He gave her nicknames that made her laugh in the middle of chaos. She confided in him about insecurities she had carried since childhood. He told her about the overwhelming fear of being boxed in by fame. They held each other's truths quietly, without judgment. People called it chemistry. Fans called it destiny. Interviewers asked them for decades if they had fallen in love, but they didn't. They protected the friendship by never crossing that line. Their connection deepened with every take. During the emotional scenes on the ship's rail, Kate steadied Leonardo with her presence. During the cold water scenes that left them shaking, he kept her calm with humor. They clung to each other between shots not because of romance, but because they were surviving something enormous together. By the time Titanic wrapped, they were transformed, not into lovers, but into something rarer. Two young actors bound by a shared experience the world would ask them to relive for the rest of their lives. And the moment the world saw their closeness, the myth took shape. If they were this connected, people thought, then surely Leonardo must regret something about Kate. But that belief was born of fiction, not truth. For 28 years, the world held on to a story it quietly crafted for Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet, one softer and more romantic than anything anchored in reality. It started the moment Titanic drifted out of theaters, and somehow it never let go. People watched Jack and Rose cling to each other in icy water, watched their hands find each other, watched their eyes meet with that mix of urgency and tenderness, and somewhere between what was acted and what was felt on the audience's side, the edges blurred. They didn't just fall for Jack and Rose. They fell for the belief that the actors must have shared something deeper, something left unspoken, something tucked away behind the scenes. Every reunion on a carpet, every laugh traded during an awards show, every candid moment where their arms rested easily around each other became another piece of imagined evidence. The world treated those small gestures as signs of a regret Leonardo was supposedly carrying, proof born from the idea that no one could portray a love that powerful on-screen without keeping a sliver of it alive off-screen. The myth grew because it comforted people. It kept the feeling of Jack and Rose alive. It made the romance feel unfinished in a poetic way that reality never quite matches. And slowly the story took shape. It whispered that somewhere in the storm of filming, Leonardo must have fallen for Kate. That somewhere in the stretch of their friendship, a quiet what-if must have crossed his mind. That somewhere beneath every shared smile lived a longing he never admitted. It became the version people preferred, the one they returned to, the one they kept breathing life into long after Leonardo and Kate moved on from those 1990s days on set. And like all myths, it held on stubbornly, fed by nostalgia, hope, and the desire to believe that the greatest on-screen love story of a generation must have left something lingering in real life. But myths don't grow from truth. They grow from longing. And this one survived because the world wasn't ready to accept that Leonardo and Kate's bond could be meaningful without ever drifting into romance. When Leonardo DiCaprio reached 50, people expected a kind of nostalgia from him. They assumed that somewhere inside the blur of fame, awards, and cultural weight, he might finally admit to a lingering softness tied to Kate Winslet. But when he let the myth slip away, what surfaced wasn't regret or longing. It was something steadier, more mature, and more genuine than the romance fans had imagined on his behalf. What surfaced was the truth of a friendship that had outlasted everything else. At 50, his perspective felt different. The sharp edges of youth had worn down, and the frantic energy of a rising star no longer followed him everywhere he went. Instead, he carried a calm awareness of the rare relationships that managed to stay intact through years of chaos and change. Kate Winslet had become one of those rare constants, not a regret, not a lost love, not a road he secretly wished he had taken. She was simply the steady point in a life that rarely allowed him to stand still. Through marriages and heartbreaks, through triumphs and failures, through reinvention, and the relentless eyes of the public, she remained the person who never asked him to be anything other than himself. She knew the young man he'd been long before the world turned him into something louder and harder to navigate. She recognized the human being beneath the icon, and she never forgot him. Their connection, unromantic, unforced, unbroken, grew into something far deeper than the fantasies fans carried for decades. By the time he turned 50, Leonardo could finally put that into words. He talked about the trust they built, the kind formed not in quiet luxury but in chaos, freezing water, collapsing sets, emotional exhaustion, and expectations neither of them were ready for. He talked about how they leaned on each other, how they survived Titanic not as star-crossed lovers but as teammates, how the world misunderstood that for so long. And with age came a simple clarity. Keeping romance out of their story is what protected it. If they had stepped into the narrative the world wanted for them, the weight of fame and speculation might have crushed the bond that mattered most. Instead, they held on to the thing that could last. At 50, Leonardo no longer felt shaped by the version of his life written by strangers. He felt shaped by the people who walked beside him without asking for a performance. Kate was one of the few who had done that from the beginning. Their connection became a kind of compass, proof that some of the strongest relationships are the ones that never cross into romance at all. What remained at 50 wasn't longing, or disappointment, or a sense of what might have been. What remained was gratitude, a quiet admiration, a friendship that had lasted longer than most Hollywood love stories ever managed to. And the unexpected truth was this: what people mistook for regret had always been respect, a respect strong enough to outlive the myth built around them. At 50, Leonardo DiCaprio no longer needed the story of Jack and Rose. He understood the truth of Leonardo and Kate, and that truth was enough. The story the world built around Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet was never the one they were living. For 28 years, people held on to an imagined past, an unspoken love, a hidden regret, a moment that never happened until it became part of Titanic's legacy, treated like a scene that existed only in memory. But myths fall apart once the truth steps in. When Leonardo at 50 spoke with quiet honesty, the truth wasn't romantic or dramatic. His regret had never been Kate. It was simply a missed professional opportunity, nothing more. The world had mistaken feeling for fact, because the fantasy stirred something powerful. Yet the real story between Leo and Kate ran deeper than romance ever could. Their connection rested on trust, respect, and the bond formed through cold water, overwhelming pressure, and the strange survival that comes with sudden fame. Their friendship endured because it never tried to imitate Jack and Rose. It lasted because they allowed each other to be real. And that is the quiet lesson. Not every meaningful relationship needs longing to matter. Some become steady anchors that outlast the noise. At 50, Leonardo stepped out of the myth, and in doing so he freed the audience too. Their bond still resonates not because it hides regret, but because it never required it. For more emotional stories, check out this video.